Hi, Tom.
Hi, Tatiana.
It's so exciting to have you here with me. I think we met first time. We met first time online, probably around what, 5 years ago, as you said.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Wow. And in fact, I don't think I have ever met you in person. I just realized that. It's so,
No, no, you're one of my online friends.
yeah. And yet I feel,
Strange world that we live in these days.
I know. And I feel we had so many intense conversations.
Yeah.
And of course, you are taking people on intense adventures, and that's what led to us having this conversation, right? So that how much intensity is present in your life and in your work, and that's what I became excited about to
Mm.
take to invite you to speak here to our listeners, to people in leadership in different industries. Actually, there is so much similarities between intensity in nature, in adventure, and intensity in life.
Hmm.
So I'd
Yeah.
love to explore it with you.
Well, I'm really excited to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me to to be a part of this. And yeah, intensity is such a huge part of what I do, and it's even woven into the very fabric of my philosophy of adventure consciousness.
Mm,
Um, my belief that I have come to after 25 years of adventure, of leadership, and of spiritual practice is that those three things, adventure, leadership, and spirituality, are three strands of the same rope,
mm-hmm,
and they're inextricably woven together. And there is an element of intensity in each one,
mm.
of course, because they're the same thing. Um, we were talking about this a little bit in the pre-show, but we didn't mention the spiritual aspect. But consciousness and self-awareness is inherently intense, right? That's why a lot of people struggle with meditation, is because when you get quiet and when you go inside, it's so intense in there, and you're like, whoa, I gotta deal with that. um, but leadership is an intense game. It's an intense arena, and if you're not prepared to handle that intensity, then you're going to have a hard time. And I think that's why a big part of why adventure and choosing intense experiences is such a powerful tool for leaders to have in their quiver.
Yes, Tom, I really resonate with that, because life by itself is actually very intense. The best,
Yeah.
most beautiful moments in life are so intense. You expecting the childbirth is so intense. The whole journey is so intense, right?
Mm.
And yet, so often we, as I see leaders and also experience it sometimes myself, to turning away from those moments of discomfort, right? And
Mm.
what I believe happens in nature, happens in adventure, is that we have the opportunity to face ourselves and our own reactions in the moments of intensity.
Hmm. Yeah. And a big part of that is that nature doesn't care about the masks that you wear,
Mm.
right? Every human being on this planet spends most of their life wearing one or many masks. The mask of child, the mask of brother, the mask of daughter, of school student, of CEO, fireman, cyclist. We wear all these masks, and leader is one of those masks often, right? Leadership is something I believe we all possess leadership, and for a lot of us in our jobs, we wear the mask of leader. Nature doesn't give a stuff about any of that stuff, any of those masks, any of those creations, because you still have to get across that river. You still have to, right, pitch a tent and sleep in the forest. You still have to, whatever it is. And again, you mentioned like what happens in your body when you know that there are bears. How does fear show up in your body? Like, that is something that is true for a stay-at-home mom and for a Fortune 500 CEO, right? As it is for a child, as it is for a doctor, as it is, doesn't matter. When we experience fear, it shows up in our body in a certain way. And again, comfort, choosing adventure, choosing intensity allows you to get some access to what happens in me and how do I respond when I'm afraid, tired, hungry, cold, whatever. One of my favorite phrases is no new behavior shows up on the mountain.
Yeah.
Because those responses are inbuilt, they're innate, and they're based on our genes, our natural inclinations, but they're also based on our experiences and the trauma that we've been through and the lessons that we learned about who we are and how the world works. And so what I found is that when someone has an intense experience in the mountains and they respond with anger, or they respond with shutdown, or they respond with being a bull in a china shop and just like barging across the thing, whatever it is, when we explore that, what we find inevitably is that is operating constantly in the background. When someone is afraid on the mountain and they get snappy and angry with everyone who tries to help, guess what? That's how they run their business. When someone just runs without thinking about the team or danger, or, well, they're probably leaving their team behind at work, and they're probably doing the same thing in their family. And so there is such medicine and such magic in choosing intensity, especially if you're someone who, like your clients have been told that the intensity that they were born with is a bad thing, that they have to shy away from, shut down, be more acceptable, be more palatable, be more whatever. I mean, you can speak more to this because it's your world than me, but my understanding of your work is helping them embrace intensity, right? That's the conversation that we're in, and and transform it from a toxic trait into a powerful and healing part of their being. Yeah,
Yes.
did I get that right?
Yeah, and I love that because what happens is that the way how fear shows up inside us, it becomes so habitual that we might not even notice it. Particularly when it feels like, wow, it's in a boardroom. I have been doing it every day for last 20 years. No, I'm not in fear. No, absolutely not. I observe some leaders and might be going into saying it's my team that they don't understand, or this person doesn't understand, or they're not hearing me, or it's like, rather than, are you sure you're not acting from fear right now? And what adventure provides what nature provides, it's opportunity to get to know oneself in a new way. And as you say, how leaders react on the mountains, that's what happens often in one or another part of their life. And that's why you mentioned bears. I was it was pre our recording, and we have just come a month ago from the amazing retreat in Transylvania, and we took leaders into the mountains, right? And it actually was pouring down with rain, and it's not what we were expecting. And nobody can argue with nature, and yet in life sometimes we argue with many other situations of reality, right? And they were actually bears in that region. And what is interesting to observe is people's reactions, so that they get to know their own physical reactions, and have that choice. Because for me, the creative intensity and life force of intensity, innovative intensity, it comes from the place of awareness of our own reactions, awareness of ourselves, so that we can approach the world with curiosity.
Yeah, and there's excuse me, there's something that's showing up for me about what happens after the intense experience. Because in the moment when the bear is maybe there, it's a peak experience and your adrenaline is high, and right, the system is on high alert. But it's when you come through, and right, this is why cold plunging is so effective, right? You choose to get into an ice bath and there is fear. It feels like you're going to die. It's an unpleasant experience, at least at the beginning when you first start. And you have to, with cold plunging, you have to really fight to stay in there, right? Whether you're in a bath or you're in the ocean or you're in a, I have rivers that I go and get in. And you have this intense experience. And then, with cold plunging, you get dry and you get a cup of tea, whatever. And you experience this release, this softness, and the same thing is true, if you come on an adventure with me for 5 days and we're hiking and we're cold and we're wet the whole time and we're sleeping in a tent, and it can be miserable. It can be utterly miserable. And you can spend a lot of your time going, what the hell am I doing? Why am I here? Why did I choose this? This is miserable. I'm not having fun at all. But then you come back, and then there's a peace that exists. There's a quietness, and that's where innovation comes from. That's where we can hear the quiet, the calm voice of intuition, of God, of our higher self. Whereas when we live in the world of intensity, which we all do because we're constantly online, emails, social media, like maintaining our perception of who we are. When we constantly live in that intensity, it's like a constant level 5 without any downtime. Because even when we go to bed, most people, most leaders go to bed at 11 after a 16-hour day, and they get into bed and start thinking about tomorrow, right? It's like always on, always intense. but never enough to trigger that relaxation response. And in that continuous low level intensity, we become scrambled.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I believe that what actually intense experiences in nature can teach us is also to distinguish between healthy intensity, or like intensity as a life force, and toxic intensity, which comes from within us. Because I believe both are possible. I'm sure you experienced with some of your clients, as you described, when they're in the mountains, they could have this anger, or whatever, when it comes from fear. It's recognizing. So the difference for me, and I heard you say the calmness, right? The voice of intuition. And even in the most dangerous situation, still this voice of intuition, the true intuition and an inner knowing, speaks with calmness. And what you said, like describing intensity in real life of many leaders, it's like, for me, intensity exists in four worlds, as we do, in the mental, physical, emotional, and energetic spiritual. And what happens is, if there is a disbalance between those four worlds, then it leads to this toxic version of intensity. So, and it means if somebody is too intensely stuck in their head and thinking and overthinking and think they can overanalyze the situations and overthink of the solutions, and control the situations, and they might be stuck in this mental world of intensity, and plus bringing to that the emotional intensity of the reactions without having the physical world to that, then that becomes imbalanced.
Yeah. I had an experience of that this weekend.
Oh, tell me more.
It's a very intense time in the world right now. And, there were all the No King's Day protests and the military parade and all of that stuff happening in the States. And it's very easy to get sucked into your head, sucked into fear, sucked into the drama of it all. And I was walking in the forest with my wife, and we were talking about it. And it was like, and I was in my thinking brain, I was like, I don't know how to be, because right, there's all this stuff going on, there's all this fear on both sides of the argument. And how do I be? I'm getting a download even as I'm sharing this story. And so we're walking along through the forest, and I saw a bee, a little bumblebee in a flower, and it was collecting pollen, and it was just in this one flower. And I just kind of stopped and watched it. And it was doing whatever, it was like rustling around, and then it would buzz its little wings, and then it would do something, and and it just captured me. And then suddenly I said to my wife, this is how I want to be spending my time. Not thinking about who's more evil in the world, or right, whatever it is. And like, that was an intense experience in a very different way. It was like intense curiosity,
Yes, yes.
intense presence, because in that moment I saw that bee, and I was like, I was there, and my whole world was that little flower, that little bee was doing its thing, fulfilling its purpose, living its life. And have ourselves that opportunity to just be present with the world. We live in a world of news cycles and infinite scroll, and we miss all of that. And that moment completely changed everything, right? I had allowed myself to get sucked into the fear and the drama and the everything's coming to an end, which is what the news wants us to believe, right? And it just brought me right back. And it allowed me to release all of that
Yeah.
and remember that the best thing that I can do is exist in a high vibration.
Yes, and fear is one of the most contagious emotion, and that's what takes
Yeah.
us out is through connecting with ourselves, with our physical existence, and with
Mhm.
being present to the world and what's happening around us with curiosity. So, and I'm actually very
Mhm.
curious. So, when you have leaders with you, say, climbing the mountain, they're probably definitely out of their comfort zone, or some of them are, and you're observing whatever default reaction they might bring in a moment of fear. What helps them in that moment to switch from this, might be some elements of toxic intensity, to more healthy version of intensity of being in the nature in a moment? What did you observe?
Well, I think one of the things that's really important about choosing intensity, about
Mhm.
choosing to be afraid,
Mhm,
is
mhm,
is doing so in an environment where you feel held.
mhm,
Um, I was watching an amazing video the other day of a dad with his kid who was maybe 2, maybe 3, and the kid wanted to jump from one stone in the playground to the next, and he was really scared, and his dad was just, and the kid was like going through all excitement, fear, anger, sadness, like it was all there because for him, this little 15 centimeter gap between the stones was like this huge thing.
mhm, mhm.
And his dad said something to him that was really powerful. He said, I wouldn't let you do it if you couldn't do it.
Mm, yes.
And so one of the things that I'm really conscious of and careful about is that I choose the adventure that is just the right amount. You know, Rich Litvin talks about 4%, right? Stephen Kotler talks about flow, 4%. Like 4% is where flow exists. So part of my job is, what is the adventure that is going to take you out of your comfort zone?
Yes.
So that this like paralyzing terror of I'm going to die, right? Because that's not healthy. It can be if you're used to it. And it's for me to be pathologically certain that they can get through it
Yes.
and to hold that energy.
Yes, and it's like, the growth happens outside of comfort zone and not in panic
Yeah.
zone. So you want to stay in this
Mhm.
outside of comfort zone. And of course, creating that environment for leaders, for their teams, where, I loved what you said, that dad said to the son, I wouldn't take you there if you could not, if I
Mm.
didn't know you can do it.
Mhm.
If the team can
Yeah.
feel that actually this trust and belief of the leadership that they can do it, then anything becomes possible.
Mhm. Yeah. So I took a guy climbing up a right behind my house. I have um, Canada's version of El
Mhm.
Capitan. It's
Mhm.
like, and it comes like right out of
Oh.
the sea, 600-meter rock face. And this one guy that I met said to me, I always, whenever I see the chief, I look up at it and I'm just in
Mhm.
awe, and it seems impossible to climb. So of course I said to him, "Do you want to climb it?" And he was like, "What?" And that already broke his brain. one of the things that gave him the power to do that. So for him, it was the second time he'd ever put on a pair of rock shoes. He was doing this big multi-pitch climb with me, which doesn't happen. Like, that's not how climbing works. But in my one little training session that I did with him, I saw that he had the technical capability to be safe, and B, had the determination and the grit to get through it. But one of the things that he said afterwards that was the most powerful piece for him that got him through was that I put my trust in him, right? Because he was holding the rope for me as much as I was holding the rope for him. And so for him, it was like, not only do I trust you to deal with yourself, I trust you to deal with me.
Yes.
I trust you to catch me if I fall.
Tom, this is so key. And the reason why it's so key, because I'm thinking even of difficult conversations that people sometimes in the teams choose not to have, because they know, okay, they are off onto the next thing on to-do list, the next thing on the journey, and brushing whatever the moments of challenges under the carpet. And actually, that's about having this mutual trust. I trust you that you can handle whatever I'm going to share from my perspective.
And I trust me that I can handle whatever you are going to
Right,
bring.
exactly. And approaching it with presence and curiosity. That's key.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my friends told me the ancient saying, difficult conversation, easy life. Easy conversation, difficult life.
Exactly right. Because elephants are
And by conversation, you can replace choice, right? Difficult choice now, easy life later. Easy choice now, difficult life later. And yeah, it's that trust that I can handle it and you can handle it. And I don't need to manage you.
Yeah.
And when I try and manage you, that's when we're going to end up in a toxic conversation. Either when I try and protect you from whatever is challenging for me, or when I try and like just push it onto you without, right? But when I trust that you can hold it and I hold you with reverence and with love, then we can have any conversation about anything.
Exactly right. And I can deal with my own discomfort of your emotions, and all emotions are welcome, right? So and through that, actually, and in those intense moments, as it is on the mountain, if once we gotten through those extreme intense moments, or whether going into cold plunge, then there is a natural moment of calmness, right? And then there is this creativity, because the fear is gone. The creativity cannot live present with fear at the same time.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And choosing to go into that creates more intimacy. It creates more trust. It creates more, right? In the past few weeks, I've had a number of situations with my wife where we've had some really challenging conversations. There was I went out for a day of ski touring, which I estimated would take 10 hours. It ended up taking 19. And she ended up calling the police and filing a missing persons report because I was out. I didn't have any signal. And that could have been, right? She spent the whole day terrified, afraid that I had fallen in a crevasse and was never coming home. It could have been a real, like, a real opportunity for judgment and blame and a big fight, and but it actually brought us closer because I have done the work to understand someone else's perspective,
Yes.
to validate her experience, and also to learn from it. You know, there was a huge amount of learning that came for me of what do I need to communicate beforehand? Because for me, nothing went wrong. It just took a bit longer, which is totally normal, but I hadn't communicated that to her. And so it was actually, you know, I could have reacted with, "Oh, don't be stupid. What do you mean you called the police? Oh, you're making a fuss, blah, 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 blah." Blame, judgment, fear, right? But it was obvious to me that I had not been a leader in that situation. I hadn't communicated to her. She's not a ski tourer. She's not an adventurer in the same way. And that puts a duty on me to put up suitable guardrails, which I hadn't done, which then created a problem. And so that made it very easy for me to own it and for us to have a powerful
Yes.
conversation, and then for us to come closer
That's
together.
right. And after such powerful, such an intense experience, as you say, you feel now closer. And
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah.
choosing actually intensity and learning about self, that's what creates a path literally to life force intensity. Tom,
Yeah.
we can speak for hours.
Mhm.
We can speak for hours. So thank you so much for your wisdom, and it's very exciting what you're bringing to the world with this adventure and for taking leaders on those journeys to get to know themselves more and to really face intensity while being held. So where can people find you?
Um, so they can find me on Instagram at Altitude Evolution, all one word. My website is altitudeevolution.com. It does a little chat widget that goes directly to my phone, so they can shoot me a message there, or my email is tom@altitudeevolution.com. Pretty easy to find on Facebook and LinkedIn. I won't share the links here, like, because they're
And
kind
you
of
can find
complicated.
on LinkedIn.
Excuse me. But yeah, you just put Tom Lancaster into Facebook or LinkedIn, and you should find me.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you for your insights, and thank you, listeners, for tuning in.
Thank you,
All the
Tatiana.
best.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been so much